Hello, advanced algebra student. Let's look at this kind of tricky example of solving equations. So it says solve 15x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0 for x. And I have to tell you the truth, you can use all these solving techniques that we've learned with the inverses and moving things around. And you would be working all day trying to get x alone. You wouldn't be able to get it alone because this is what we call a quadratic equation. Now, some quadratic equations we've been kind of able to cheat on using the square rooting both sides, but it's not going to work for you this time because we have an x squared term and we have an x term. You're going to get stuck trying to isolate x. You're not going to be able to get it by itself unless you have some more skills. So there's actually more than one way to solve quadratic equations, but the way we've been going, the way we've been practicing is with the quadratic formula on the formula sheet. So go ahead, hit up the formula sheet, and you'll see this kind of ugly formula, but that's okay. We can handle. Breathe, breathe, breathe. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over, whoops, I made it too long, all over, so the entire right-hand side is over 2a. Awesome. So in order to figure out x, we need this a, this b, and this c plugged into this kind of ugly expression here, but that's okay. So where do you get the a, the b, and the c? Well, a, b, and c are the coefficients if and only if your quadratic equation is solved for 0. So first thing you should do is confirm that it's solved for 0, that everything is over on one side, all the terms, and it's all equal to 0. Check. Once that's done, if it's in that format, then you can see your A, your B, and your C. Your A is going to be the first coefficient, the one in front of x squared, or b squared, or c squared, or whatever squared you have. So I have a 15x squared, so my A will be 15, just the 15, not the x squared part. The b will be the number in front of x. Now you might say, hey, Kate, there's no number in front of x. It must be a 0. No way, dude. Sorry. Remember that the invisible coefficient is 1. And so we have negative 1x here. Keep the sign with it. The b is negative 1. And then as far as c is concerned, it's just the constant term, the plain old number. And in this case, the constant term is negative 2. Keep the sign with it. And there's my information to plug in. 15, negative 1, and negative 2. Let's do it. All right, so x is equal to negative, and now look, my b is also negative. So I'm basically saying x is equal to the opposite of negative b. Now you can write it like that, or you can be like a lazy mathematician and straight from the beginning say, hey, the opposite of negative 1 is positive 1. So basically just change the sign on your b, all right? Plus or minus, don't freak out about the plus minus. We'll deal with it when the time comes. The square root, nice and long, of b squared. Now this is crucial. This is crucial. You absolutely must have the parentheses here to do b squared, or else you're going to get a wrong answer because of the way exponents work. We learned that if you want to square a negative number, you must use parentheses in order to make sure the whole number, including the negative, is being squared. So negative 1 squared minus 4, and that's times a, which is 15, and oh, I need a longer square root, times c, which is negative 2. And that's all going to be over 2 times a. All right. Now, again, you're probably thinking this is really disgusting, but your calculator is going to handle most of the work for you here. I'm going to do some of it. I'm going to have some of it done in my calculator. The main thing is to kind of work around the plus minus sign because I don't have a plus minus sign in my calculator. I'm going to do what's on the left of that, what's on the right of that, and what's underneath that first. So on the left of the plus minus sign, I just have the 1. That's cool. On the right of the plus minus sign, I have that square root of all that junk. Like you can type that entire thing into your calculator if you want to, okay? I don't have my calculator on me, so I'm not going to. I'm going to do it by hand. But you can do it in your calculator and check me, all right? So the square root. So I'll square -1. -1 times -1 is 1. And that's going to be minus, actually plus. Let me tell you why it's going to be plus. I'm thinking about multiplying together all these numbers. And I know a negative times a negative is a positive, so it's plus. Okay, so then let's do it in an order that makes sense to me. 15 times 2 is 30. 30 times 4 is 120. Awesome. And now I will simplify the bottom. 2 times 15 is 30. Okay, I still have some more simplifying I can do on the right-hand side of that plus minus. Let's do it. So x is equal to 1 plus or minus 120 plus 1 is 121. So I'll have the square root of 121 all over 30. Keep on going because I can take the square root of 121. That is a perfect square. If it wasn't a perfect square, I would just simplify. I could do it in my calculator and move on. But since it's a perfect square, hey, the square root of 121 is 11. And now I have 1 plus or minus 11 over 30. And now is when I have to deal with that plus minus because there's nothing else to do. And basically what that plus minus means is that we have two different answers. We have an answer if we add, and if we have an answer if we subtract. So quadratics, things where the x's are squared, equations where the x's are squared, generally have two answers. So I'll have one where I use the plus sign, and one where I subtract. Cool, let's simplify them separately now. So 1 plus 11 is 12, so I have 12 over 30. And that's a fine answer. We're just fine with fractions, but do remember that all final fraction answers should be reduced. So you can reduce by hand if you know how, or you can just put the fraction 12 over 30 into your calculator, press enter, and it will reduce for you. But I see a common factor of 6 that I will divide out of both of them. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 30 divided by 6 is 5. 2/5 is that answer. On the other side, 1 minus 11, and again, you can do it in your calculator, but that's -10 over 30, and those have a common factor of 10, so I can reduce that as well, and I get -1/3. So two answers, 2/5 and -1/3. And I think on the worksheet, it's a multiple choice. So even if you didn't know that this was a quadratic equation, you have some hints. One of the hints is that every one of those multiple choice has two answers. That was a big hint that it was a quadratic. And then even if you forget the quadratic equation or you feel intimidated by it, remember, you could have guessed and checked, like taken those individual answers, plugged them into the equation, and seen if they made the equation true. All right, well, we did hard work, but let me tell you, you have to be a quadratic equation ninja for college. So even though you technically, if you never master this for the GED, not that big of a deal because it's not a huge issue, it becomes pretty dang important in college algebra. So having this exposure to it is good for you. You can handle. You can do hard things. All right, guys. All right. Okay. Proud of you. Happy learning.